Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the INSTEM investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your question at any time and press send. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, the company, I'm sure, will be most grateful. Now, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to the management team from INSTEM. Good afternoon.
Thanks very much, Mark. Welcome, everybody. Sorry we're a few minutes late. That's because my laptop decided to do a reboot and an application of updates. That's technology for you. As a technology company, we're going to talk about much greater success with our clients. Hopefully, we will find that a good number of you are already INSTEM investors, or a good number of you have already heard the INSTEM story, but we will quickly go through all of the slides so those people that know us well, my apologies if you're hearing something that is a refresher. You'll be pleased to hear we're not going to spend time talking about the disclaimer. We will take it for granted that you will all come back to this slide and read this in absolute detail subsequently. We've got three people on the call. Two of us you may have heard from before, but we have a new participant. John, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Certainly. Thanks, Phil. Hello, everybody. My name is John Horton. I am the head of investor relations for INSTEM. I've been with INSTEM for, it'll be 7 years, actually, in September. I came by way of the DWise acquisition and have about just over 20 years background and experience in the life science space, working for both large pharma as well as clinical CROs.
Great. Thanks, John. And Nigel?
So hello, I'm Nigel Goldsmith, the Group CFO. I'm based in Stone in Staffordshire in the UK headquarters, and I've been with the company since the end of 2011. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nigel. And I'm Phil Reason, CEO. I've been CEO since of INSTEM, this part of INSTEM, since 1995, but joined the company in the 80s. Slide advance. Dropped off the bottom of my screen.
I can move it for you.
There you go. Thank you. So who are INSTEM? We are a world-leading provider of workflow software and data solutions that improve life sciences research and development, allowing our clients to operate with greater efficiency, enabling them to bring their life-enhancing products to market faster. We don't often share our vision and values with investors, but having undertaken 3 acquisitions in 2021, you will be very aware that having a coherent organizational culture, a clear vision of the future is critically important to have a coherent organization that's operating well internally and engaging consistently externally. We spent about 15 months working on the development and the rollout of our new vision and values. And I mention them here because they flow on really nicely from the mission you heard on our previous slide, because we see that the life sciences research and development industry is moving into a new era that we are at the heart of, which is all around the transformation of how R&D is undertaken for the benefit of everybody, and that we see a future where intelligent solutions empower collaboration and life-enhancing science. And our values on the right, you're going to hear quite a lot in this presentation around the amount of collaboration that is routinely undertaken in life sciences R&D, and which INSTEM is at the heart of, which enables all of those stakeholders as a community to thrive together. We see that community as not just including INSTEM, our customers, the regulators, but people like yourselves, investors that are interested and excited and support INSTEM as we grow and thrive together. A quick summary of INSTEM's international scale and reach. As a business that's been operating in life sciences R&D for over 40 years, we've amassed a large client base, over 700 clients, including many blue chip clients. All of the top 25 pharmaceutical companies are clients of INSTEM. An awful lot of the studies that are undertaken that our system support are performed by contract research organizations who the pharma companies outsource to. Those CROs are also clients of INSTEM. This is very much an international industry, so INSTEM is represented strongly all over the world where life sciences R&D is undertaken in any volume. You can see there that, and we'll come on to talk more about how our revenue is made up, but 60% of our revenue comes from the USA. The North America represents about 60% of the expenditure on life sciences R&D, so it's no surprise to see a proportion of our revenue that reflects that. But UK and Europe remains very strong in this area, and an emerging market to complement a strong Japanese industry, but an emerging Asian market in China and particularly South Korea. We have over 530 people in the team. They come with a huge amount of experience in the technology we provide, but also the life sciences domains in which we operate. We have wonderful technology, but that technology is brought to life by a fantastic team of people who operate theoretically out of 13 offices. The reality is post-COVID, 95% of our staff now work remotely. They do that very successfully, and it's provided a tremendous work-life balance that perhaps we could only imagine pre-COVID. I'm not going to talk to the numbers on the left-hand side of this slide. Nigel is going to cover these in some more detail. Suffice it to say that we were extremely pleased by a very strong performance financially in 2022. Just picking up one or two of the highlights on the right-hand side. I'll particularly talk to the two contracts here with large contract research organizations. The one that was a 12 million contract, the biggest contract that we had ever been awarded for a new solution that we are developing for the analysis of large amounts of data in late-stage clinical trials. They are the lead client for that new solution that's being developed called Aspire. That is progressing very well. We expect to deliver that new system to that client in September, and that is on track. And then the bottom bullet here for a long-established client, and the reason I highlight this one is that client added 900 new users of one of our established study management products, Provantis. And the reason that this is a really, other than the fact that it's a decent-sized order, it really brings home how robust life sciences R&D has been over the last year or two. We get repeated questions from investors and potential investors around the difficulty that small biotech have had raising capital to continue to invest in their drug R&D programs, and is that going to be a headwind for INSTEM? The reality is we have seen no negative impact of that, and we hear from our contract research organizations who are the people that are doing business with lots of these small pharma companies, that they also are not seeing any particular headwind in this area. So the fact that some companies are indeed struggling to fund their R&D program is being more than offset by the demand from the rest of the industry. Again, I'm not going to talk to the numbers on the bottom of this slide, but I'll pick out a couple of the numbers in the row in blue. The second number there, I mentioned at the very beginning that INSTEM is a world-leading provider of software and tech-enabled services. Lots of companies claim to be leading providers We thought this statistic might be helpful for you. So in 2022, we won 52% of all business that we tendered for or bid for. We lost 13%. So that is all of our competitors combined won 13% of what was placed. We won 52%. The balance is work that wasn't placed with anybody. And so I think this captures just in one statistic the degree of success that we have in the market. We have a range of products and services. The win rates vary. As it happens, our two biggest revenue generators both won over 80% of all business placed. So really very strong across the business. The other thing I'll pick out is the recurring revenue retention rate there, the 98% plus. We have a KPI to exceed 98% of the prior year's recurring revenue at renewal, and we comfortably beat that statistic, which we have done every reporting period since we IPO'd in 2010. Next slide, please. A couple of other things to pick out here, and then the last bullet we will is the lead into several slides that talk about an exciting new acquisition. But before we get to that, we announced last week the renewal of a large contract that is with the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences in the US. It's one of the agencies of the National Institute of Health. The NIHS managed something called the National Toxicology Program, which is a multi-agency project. We've been providing software for that agency or those agencies to run the National Toxicology Program for the last 10 years. It's generated about $10 million in revenue over that period. They just renewed for another 5 years for a contract that has a maximum value of $16.5 million. And what's particularly exciting is that as well as renewing for the things that they have been using for 10 years, they've licensed a set of our other study management applications, and importantly, have also licensed our in silico technologies. And we'll come on to talk more about in silico and the importance of that to us. The other thing is, it was fantastic to welcome Mary Dolson as an independent non-executive director to the board in January. Having had one of our independent non-executive directors, Mike McGowan, on the board since we IPO'd in 2010. QCA guidelines would suggest that Mike should not be regarded as independent, having been on the board for more than 9 years alongside an executive management team that have also had significant tenure. And so Mary, as well as being a tremendous addition as a former audit partner for PricewaterhouseCoopers with a strong specialization in the life sciences, she also provides that second truly independent director that has us compliant with QCA guidelines. Next slide, please. So I said I will come on to talk more about in silico. So the terminology can be a little bit unclear from the outset. The use of the Latin in silico to reflect R&D that is undertaken through modeling and insight generation through software and technology is used to differentiate it from other terms in life sciences R&D, which are in vitro, which is studies that are undertaken in things like tissues and cell cultures, and in vivo, which is studies that are undertaken in live subjects, animals or humans. And there has been a huge movement over the last 5 years or so to try and replace as much of the in vivo work, the animal and human study work, by in silico modeling and insight generation. And that's because the world would like to reduce the number of animals used in experimentation, and they would like to reduce the number of humans that have to volunteer to participate in clinical trials when it is unclear whether drugs are yet safe or effective. And so if we can ascertain through computer simulation and modeling and insight generation that drugs are safe and effective, and then give them to a smaller number of human subjects and a smaller number of animals, that will take considerably less time, it will cost considerably less money, and it will put fewer human trial participants at safety risk. Or if you are on a randomized clinical trial, which is the best practice in clinical trials, and you happen to be given the placebo rather than the active drug, you might be on a trial where you could be getting a treatment, and you're not getting your treatment, you're getting a placebo, which will have no beneficial effect. So there are huge advantages to advancing your R&D program much further, much faster in silico. This will address some of that long time, 10 to 12 years to bring a new drug to market, spending over $2 billion on average. As a consequence, lots of rare diseases, there is no R&D program in place because pharma companies cannot see an ROI to spend the level of investment necessary to bring a drug to market if there are only 5,000 or 10,000 potential patients that are afflicted by that disease worldwide. Next slide, please. Oh, we jumped on.
Sorry, one more.
There we go. So what will it take to bring in silico alternatives to fruit? Well, pretty much all computer-based predictions and modeling require good quality data. They require the data to be of a level of quality and provenance that you can reliably deduce information from it. So data has got to have utility. If this is human clinical data, then you need to ensure that the subjects in your clinical trial cannot be identified. So you need to anonymize that data so that the data remains private. And then you need a tremendous amount of domain expertise in this very complicated world of chemistry and biology in life sciences R&D. So volumes of data are not exceptionally high. If you compare the amount of data that we might be processing to credit card transaction data, for example, lots more data in credit card transactions than we have, but the data is much more straightforward in credit card transactions. So the depth of domain expertise we need in life sciences R&D is orders of magnitude greater than it is in some of the other areas where people are leveraging technologies looking at historic data. The great thing is INSTEM ticks all of these boxes around access to data, having data that is of good quality and utility, being able to anonymize data to maintain privacy, and we have the domain expertise to be able to leverage that data intelligently. Some of that, though, we are organizationally reorganizing to take advantages of what we have today, and as we absorb a really new exciting acquisition called ToxHub that we've acquired from an industry collaboration called eTransSafe. Interesting, it didn't do the transition. So what is eTransSafe and what is ToxHub? So eTransSafe, it's a project that was, and the name comes from translational safety. So what can we deduce from safety data that we have seen on previous studies, and how can we translate that prior findings to what we might be researching today? It also applies to the translation of what we see in non-clinical studies to what we're seeing in clinical studies, or vice versa. Maybe we're seeing a clinical adverse event. Can we look back to the earlier non-clinical studies to see if that will inform us about what might be going on in our human clinical trial? The project was initiated in 2017. It's run for 5.5 years. It finished at the end of February of 2023. It was funded by the European Union through the Innovative Medicines Initiative, and it was all around speeding up drugs coming to market and reducing the use of animals in experimentation. The project, lots of grant-funded projects, not just through the European Union, but around the world, put lots of endeavour into things, but don't end up with a finished deliverable. People might learn and have insight, but no particular deliverable. This is one of the few exceptions that produced a really valuable deliverable, and that deliverable is twofold. It's both a technology platform, and it is encompasses the sharing of data from the participants, the drug companies and chemical companies that were part of the consortium, who've contributed study data into the platform that can then be leveraged across all of those organizations and others that come on board with this application. Next slide, please. These are the partners, a number of very recognizable big pharma names here. And the first of these, Bayer, has, having transferred the ToxHub platform from eTranssafe when that project came to an end at the end of February to INSTEM to commercialize. Bayer is the first client that has actually placed their subscription order, and we expect several others to follow this year, and most of the remainder to follow at the beginning of next year. And so we will have a blue chip client base as early adopters of the application. And one of the things that is particularly exciting about ToxHub coming from eTranssafe is that for many years we've successfully executed on our strategy to organically and acquisitively bring a broad portfolio of workflow management solutions into INSTEM that manage and collect the data from a wide variety of different study types across from early discovery into late-stage clinical trials, developing long-standing client relationships, deep understanding of the data that is collected, and trusted partnerships with pharma companies who recognize INSTEM's ability to be able to leverage the information that's come from these study management systems through in silico insights, modeling insights based on the data. What we haven't advanced as quickly as those individual components is the centralized data hub that we can ingest data from those applications and to which we can connect our existing in silico solutions and new in silico capabilities. And that's what comes with ToxHub. It's that central repository that we can use as the basis for putting huge volumes of data and then connecting our modeling and simulation applications. It also overcomes what has been a very real challenge as to how do we get pharma companies comfortable with the mechanism of sharing their data with one another? How do they overcome the risk and fear that at the same time as having their highly valuable current drug assets in a system alongside many more failed drug candidates of the past that have got rich data with them that they want to share with one another because they have no inherent value, because those drug candidates failed for safety liabilities or were determined to have no efficacious benefit. How do they make sure they don't expose their valuable current drug programs? Because they want all of the data in the same system. They want to be able to look at the similarity between what they're researching today against the things that maybe didn't go so well when they researched them in the past. They have overcome that through the eTransSafe Consortium, and it provides a legal framework in which we can potentially contribute huge volumes of data from our workflow systems. Next slide, please. So, what might this opportunity represent in value terms? Very conservatively, the current total available market for solutions of this type is greater than £500 million per year. If we think about the in silico technologies we already have, the in silico technologies that are coming to us with the ToxHub acquisition, what we have available where we could service that total available market, the service of available market, or SAM, around £150 million. And because the in silico world is growing very quickly, we see both the total available market and the serviceable addressable market growing substantially over the next 3 to 5 years. What it's going to take investment terms, because what we're inheriting here is not a commercial system that has already got all of the infrastructure and all of the people. We're getting the assets of the data, and so we need to put in place the team. So this starts with marketing and sales into the team that deliver these clients, provide consultancy around these projects, provide customer support, and in an international market, that is a team of people that is all around the world so that we can service clients exceptionally well as they experience this new application from INSTEM. That's an investment that we expect to be around £2.5 million in the first year to carry on at that level. Revenue in the first 12 months is likely to be less than $1 million. Sorry to switch backwards and forwards between pounds and dollars, but the revenue will build over time. That might feel like a significant investment, but to just give that some relevance, if we were to acquire a commercial business that had the assets that are coming with ToxHub, had some lead clients, probably not as strong as the 13 lead clients that come with this eTransSafe Consortium, and came with 10,000 studies worth of data that have already been contributed, we're probably looking at an acquisition that might cost us 10 to 20 million pounds. So a £2.5 million year one investment as revenue builds is a much less expensive, less risky way of getting access to the quality of business that comes with ToxHub from eTransSafe. Next slide, please. To maximize the potential of our in silico solutions, we've had a little bit of a portfolio reorganization. We have taken the business that we have anonymizing clinical trial data that has a software product called Blur that clients license and anonymize their own clinical trial data internally, or they send us their data and we use our software and we anonymize it for them and send them back anonymized data. We're moving that business into our newly enlarged in silico business, now called in silico and translational sciences. The reason we're doing that is the the biggest opportunity for anonymizing clinical trial data is not what we've been doing up until now, which is doing that on behalf of clients because they were required to submit anonymized data to the regulatory authorities in Europe and Canada, but to anonymize every clinical trial they run, even if they don't reach submission, so that they can reuse that data for insight generation, even for their clinical trials that failed. And often the richest data to take forward into the future is not for those clinical trials that succeed. It's not for those non-clinical trials that succeed. It's for the ones that fail, and we understand why they fail, and we can use that data to weed out other drugs in our portfolio that may well fail for similar reasons in the future, and we fail them early now and allow investment to focus on the ones that have the greatest chance of success. We have also recently disposed of a small software business within the portfolio in regulatory information management. It's a business we acquired in 2016. We thought it would have some good synergy benefits in life sciences R&D. In reality, most of the business that we've generated is in post-marketing once drugs and medical devices are approved, but you need to get them registered in each country around the world where you market them. The software is great at that, but it's the only software that we sell into post-marketing, and so there was no synergy benefits with other things in the portfolio. As a consequence, it's a business where revenue has stagnated, and it made more sense to sell this to one of our direct competitors that we thought would be a much better home for the business, a better home for our customers in that area, a better home for a small number of our staff in this area, where that business could continue to grow and thrive. And that was completed on the 31st of March and takes about £1.2 million worth of recurring revenue out of the business. We've also moved the business that transforms study data into the SEND standard, a mandatory standard for submission to the FDA, that was part previously of a regulatory solutions business unit with our regulatory information management business. We've moved that business to create SEND data in with our study management business, where it has tremendous synergy, and we think we will continue to increase and extend cross-selling benefits and efficiency for our clients as they link together the study execution with the submission of that data for regulatory approval. Next slide, please. And what you see in the next two slides is that change. So this is the revenue split across the four business units that we have reported against segmentally over the last few years, and we've reported in this way for full year 2022. So the way we'll report going forward, which is on the next slide, which is in three business units with regulatory solutions no longer present. On this one, you will also see, again, our view on the size of the total available market, the size of our serviceable addressable market, and the revenue today. In most instances, the revenue is somewhere between that we generated in 2022 is sort of between 5 and 10%, or a little bit more than 10% of the serviceable addressable market. So still plenty of headroom to grow our revenue in each of these areas, and over time to extend our portfolio to address a wider slice of the total available market. You can also see on this slide that there are slightly different growth expectations in each of these areas. So in study management, that's more mature, around 10%. In Silico, which is the least mature area in the industry, an opportunity to grow. Conservatively, this says at a greater than 20% level, we actually see the opportunity for this to be growing very much faster than that over the next few years. Next slide, please. And Nigel, over to you for the numbers.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so this is just a quick snapshot of the numbers that are reported this morning as we put out our RNS. Initially, the highlights, ones that Phil referred to early on in the presentation. So very pleased really with the year overall. We were up in all of the categories which you can see on the chart here. It was the first full year of integrating the acquisitions that we met and reporting the results that we made in 2021. 3 acquisitions there. So this now reflects the full business as we sit today. And very pleasingly, as I said, up in each of these areas, which I'll come on to now. There's a lot of detail on here, which I'll just pick out some of the salient points. Revenue up 28%. Recurring revenue, which is really important to us, that constitutes the annual support and maintenance fees that we provide together with our software as a service fees. And the total of those was up 7% from 52% to 59% of total revenue in the year. On a constant currency basis, we grew by 20% on revenue. Most of our currency exposure is in North America, but we also have a natural hedge there with a cost base based in the US, and therefore the impact typically of when you set off the cost base against the revenues there is negligible at profit level, and that proved to be the case in 2022 as well. In terms of costs, we're a people business. The majority of our costs are people related, just over 70% again this year. And like many businesses, we were impacted by the impact of inflation on our salaries in the early part of 2022. We countered that by increasing our sales prices, and we got some of that in the first half of last year, but more so in the second half. And we were very much second half weighted in terms of profitability. As you can see on the profit line there, our half one EBITDA margin on revenue was 16%. In the second half was 20%, averaging out at 18% for the year. And going forward, that actually is in line with our stated strategy of moving towards 25% plus EBITDA. It will be impacted by the overlay of the Toxhub business, which we've talked about, and the investment in that going forward. We had the benefit of a low tax rate, effective tax rate in the year. We were very prudent on our provisions on the acquisitions in 2021, and some of that reversed into 2022. Therefore, we got the benefit of that. We've continued to claim R&D tax credits across the group, so again benefited from that. And what we're guiding towards going forward, particularly with the increase in UK taxes up to 25% from this year, is a 25% rate rather than 30%, which has been in analyst guidance in prior years. I'll come on to cash a little later. In terms of revenue split, you can see here on the left-hand side our segmental analysis of revenues. The majority and building block of our business on study management, which is the royal blue portions of the bars at the bottom, underpinning that actually is primarily our legacy business. That's what generates the majority of our recurring revenues and throws out the cash to invest in the rest of the business. Clinical trial analysis is the turquoise part of the bars at the top, and that's the new business that came in through DY's acquisition in 2021. So again, forming a significant part of our growth, and nice growth in the other two parts of the business, regulatory solutions, primarily Send, and in Silico, which again Phil's talked about, and that's where we see the real focus and growth opportunities in the business going forward. And for those of you who like lots of numbers, there on the right-hand side where you can see the trend of those revenue streams broken down a little further over the last 5 years. In terms of geographic spread of revenues, as again Phil said on an earlier slide, predominantly North America. That's been the case ever since we were in business, and further growth in 2022 over 21 in that area. North America's formed probably more than 50% of our total revenues over the last few years, and that was strengthened by the acquisition of DWise, which is predominantly North America focused on client base. But growth in the rest of the world and Europe. UK tends to cycle between slightly up, slightly down year on year, but forms the smallest part of the geographic spread. So that's fine in terms of risk from our point of view. In terms of cash, again, in the first half of last year, our cash conversion was poor, 41% of EBITDA. We recognised that was going to reverse in the second half, which it did, and that was over 120%, averaging out at 91% for the full year. We showed on a prior slide that we ended the year with organic cash of 14 million on the balance sheet, after paying 5.4 million of deferred and contingent consideration payments for the acquisitions in 2021, and in 2023, the first quarter of this year, we've paid the final amounts of those consideration payments of an additional 5.8, which was paid out of our organic cash. And at the bottom, you can see 20% debt facility, which we have negotiated with HSBC. 10 million of that is committed, 10 million uncommitted, but access to that on request, and that's available for general corporate purposes. More detailed slide here, and just a quick snapshot of revenue growth year on year over the last few years. And you can see in all areas, in all categories, 2021 really being the catalyst for transforming the business with the acquisition of DWise and the other two acquisitions that year. So we've got growth in recurring revenues, SaaS revenues, and our EBITDA. And finally, from the financials, growth of software as a service, again, another tenet to our strategic direction growth in this area of software as a service. So new business predominantly coming in as software as a service, and also converting our existing customers to a software as a service platform wherever possible. We've converted 30% of our existing users, as it said on the first bullet, and we have an expectation that all our customers will have committed to convert to SaaS by the end of the first quarter of next year, and after that they will automatically be switched across. In terms of not getting new, they won't be entitled to any new upgrades on software. So we'll support them for a period of time, and then eventually they will transfer across. So that process continues. Back over to you, Phil.
Super. Thanks, Nigel. Next slide. So I'm not going to spend time talking to this slide. Simply says that there's a huge societal demand for drugs. There's a lot spent by pharma companies on R&D, and maybe the bullet on the right is the most important one. They are disproportionately spending more on analytics applications that overlaps with our in silico area. Next slide, please. Again, not going to talk to the large amount of data on this slide. Suffice to say that the chart in the bottom left, the more drugs in the overall pipeline and the more they grow year on year, the more demand there is for the technology that supports the R&D processes for those drugs in R&D. The growth has been successful at all stages of R&D. INSTEM systems support all stages of R&D, and everything has been healthy over the last year or two and looks healthy going forward. Overall, if you've heard us present before, you will know that we have a target to double our revenue from about 60 million in 2022 to 120 million plus over the next 3 to 5 years. We feel we're on a good trajectory for that. A combination of organic growth and continued bolt-on sized acquisitions. We might get there faster or get further if we were able to acquire something more material, but we can't count on that. So a small number of bolt-on acquisitions over the next few years plus organic growth will get us to that target. We expect as the business grows that we will have operating leverage that will help us improve margins. We expect our recurring revenue will grow from 59% in 2022 to around 65% over the next 2 or 3 years. And then we'll plateau at that sort of level as we continue to introduce new technology-enabled services where we have exceptional expertise to be able to help our clients best leverage the Silico technology capabilities in our portfolio. And it might be better that we provide that as a service than just licensing the sophisticated technology to our clients. So both things will happen, so our services will continue to grow. We expect our market cap to not just grow because of our revenue and profit growth, but as people increasingly appreciate the transformational opportunity of in silico R&D, and as a consequence, our valuation multiples increase as well as the revenue and profit itself. And as a consequence, we see a huge opportunity for share price appreciation. Accretive M&A, as we've said, remains an important part of the strategy. We are focusing on acquisitions that can help with our in silico and translational sciences business unit and software applications to add into our clinical trial analytics business unit that will enhance the Aspire proposition as we introduce that later this year. We've been very acquisitive in study management over the last 10 years. We think we have a really comprehensive portfolio there where there's no necessity to add things organically, acquisitively over the next few years. Opportunistically, if something comes up that's too good to miss, we won't rule something out, but it's not where we are actively pursuing targets. Next slide, please. M&A, we're well positioned. We've been very successful in finding, executing, and then leveraging the benefit of acquisitions. We've had very supportive shareholders on AIM supporting us with fundraisers. We've deployed organically developed cash well, and as Nigel mentioned, we have the debt facility. Acquisitions in silico are likely to be at higher multiples than we've paid on average, but then you've heard the benefits that can be delivered. And if we can accelerate bringing our technology portfolio to market faster, it is potentially worth paying slightly more for acquisitions in that area. Next slide, please. So, summary. So thank you for those people who've already posted questions. If you've got one in your mind, please put it in as I summarize. A great financial performance in 2022 puts us in a really strong position as we open up 2023. We have an industry that is in desperate need of finding ways to more efficiently and cost effectively pursue its drug development and wider life sciences development goals. A lot of that is around technology and technology that is in INSTEM's portfolio. We have a great historic track record of success with our clients. We are a highly trusted partner, and we look very optimistically towards the future. So with that, we will open up to questions.
That's great. Phil, let me just jump in there. Phil, Nigel, John, thank you ever so much for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while we give the guys a few minutes to review those questions submitted already, I'd just like to remind you that the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Nigel, Phil, we'll bring back up your cameras hopefully for the second half. But as you can see, you've had a number of questions from investors throughout today's presentation. So firstly, thank you to everybody for your engagement this afternoon. If I may, Phil, hand back to you. If I could just ask you just to read out the questions and then I'll pick up from you at the end.
Given the complexity of the different operations, subsidiaries and recent M&A, why haven't thought about a large larger auditor than PKF?
I think it's. I mean, PKF are very relevant for AIM, I think, and for the size of our business as we are today. I think in due course, assuming we continue to grow in the trajectory that we have, if PKF can grow with us, we're very, very happy to continue growing with them. At some point, potentially, we may move to a Big Four firm, but as right now, we feel that from a cost point of view and the service point of view, we're very, very happy with the relationship we have with PKF.
Good questions. Thanks, Alejandro. Sam, great job. I know the focus is now on organic growth, but is M&A still in your plans? And given the macro environment, are you seeing an increase in the number of opportunities? So I'll answer, yes, they're in our plans still. We've obviously talked a little bit about that, and as the presentation went on, I think you probably typed this in before we got to those slides. There are a few more opportunities, yes, because particularly for young tech businesses and young tech businesses in the in silico space, who are still in the phase of developing their technologies, maybe have some early customers, but don't yet generate substantial profit, but are on the cusp of it. It's much more difficult for them to continue to get funding as early stage businesses. And so they look at INSTEM and the infrastructure that we have in place already to support them. So as they're thinking of maybe scaling up their sales and marketing, or putting in place the operations staff in additional countries around the world as they try to reach out beyond the country in which they've been founded, they can look at all of those capabilities in the INSTEM enterprise and think, it would be much easier for us to grow as part of somewhere like INSTEM. And INSTEM, one of the benefits that we have is there are bigger acquirers than INSTEM out there, but it can be quite intimidating and worrisome to a small business to be acquired by a very large business. Maybe we're interesting today, but will we be interesting in 2 years' time? What influence might we have in this large business? Although INSTEM is potentially quite a lot bigger than some of the acquisition targets, we've got a great track history of people coming into INSTEM and having a voice, having an influence, and we don't drown out the reasons why we acquired them. So yes, lots of opportunities. Probably there are a few more than there were. That said, unfortunately, that's not depressing prices very much because high quality businesses continue to demand premium valuations. John, are you confident you have sufficient software staff to develop the eTransafe platform expeditiously and fully? Great question, John. We have retained a Spanish software house called GMV that have done a lot of the development for ToxHub during the last few years. They are experts in the majority of the software in ToxHub. Our own staff internally are indeed very busy because we have some very successful and important organic development initiatives. So we will continue to use GMV. We will obviously put some INSTEM technical staff into the project so we intimately understand it and we start to have some of that knowledge transfer. But GMV have come very highly recommended by the consortium, and the consortium were very pleased to know that we would continue to use them. So that will help us make sure that we can bring the right resources to bear. Marix, what was the company's organic growth in 2022? Nigel?
It was probably single to high single digits. So mid to high single digits in the year. It was slightly difficult to split out the PDS acquisition because that was integrated very quickly following the acquisition, and therefore it was part of the other parts of the business. So to split that out separately, but that's typically how we're guiding to around about 10% organic growth going forward.
Great question, thank you. I am conscious that we are bang on time, so although we did have some more questions, Mark will let you know, no doubt,
Yes.
that we are going to answer them subsequently. Mark, back to you.
Nigel, Phil, thank you very much indeed, and thank you once again to everybody for their engagement this afternoon and for your questions. Phil, Nigel, I know investor feedback is important to you both. I'll shortly redirect everyone on the call to give you their thoughts and expectations. But I wondered before doing so, if I may, Phil, just come back to you for a few closing comments, and then I'll send investors for their feedback.
Well, initially, thank you very much for your continued engagement and enthusiasm. Our growth and success to this date has been as a consequence of the efforts of many stakeholders, including supportive investors. So thank you. You are making a difference to how quickly we're helping our clients bring their life-changing therapies to market. Please do continue to share your questions and feedback. We take it all very seriously, and I hope that you have heard today how excited we are about the potential going forward. So thank you to you all. Mark, back to you.
That's great. Phil, Nigel, John, thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please could I ask you not to close this session, as we're now going to automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of INSTEM PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. Good afternoon to you all.